there is a daily APY of 5.7%. But over the last 3 months, you can see that the average APY of just holding the token in your wallet, not actually providing it to any liquidity pools, not doing anything else with it, you're able to bring in, or over the last 3 months, around 20% on your USD plus.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of WagMe TV. We have a really special one for you. We're doing a follow-up on last week's episode about DeFi protocols on AERO. And we're talking about one specifically that is looking like it has the chance to yield over 5% consistently on a monthly basis. And we're going to do a deep dive on that. We're talking overnight finance today. One disclaimer, obviously, this is not financial advice. You know, we just are crypto nerds diving deep, trying to give you as much alpha as possible. But again, do your own research, not financial advice, for entertainment purposes only. But with that said, hope you guys like the video. We're going to dive in and hand it over to Evan for a overview.
What you're seeing here is currently there is a daily APY of 5.7%. But over the last 3 months, you can see that the average APY of just holding the token in your wallet, not actually providing it to any liquidity pools, not doing anything else with it, you're able to bring in, or over the last 3 months, around 20% on your USD plus. And so, yeah, and just a quick note, that 5% is if you were to just hold the token in your wallet. If you were to look over at the pools that are actually on Aerodrome Finance here, you can see that you're bringing in far more yield than 5%. So, yeah, we wanted to dive into some of the overnight finance tokens. They have a really great brand to their tokens. It's really the tokens with a plus sign behind it, so they're pretty easy to find. On the Aerodrome liquidity pools here, I've pulled up all the USD plus liquidity pools, and I wanted to go through, just showing the different APRs that you can get from these pools. So they've got a few with DOLA, and then a few pools where both of the assets in the pool are overnight finance tokens. And obviously with DOLA, you've got 32% up here. USD plus, USDC plus is at 23%, and on down, right around 18% for these other two pools. And what I think is super interesting about this is, although this is just showing the APY or APR for the pool, these tokens actually have yield in themselves. And so what we wanted to do was dive into, essentially the yield that you can get just holding these tokens. And one thing I also wanted to show was really the reason that we're covering overnight finance. And the reason is because if you were to look at the AERO token holders here, the leaderboard, which we've got pulled up here on Dune, they are the 6th largest protocol here, or AERO holders. And so, they really have a lot of clout within the Aerodrome platform to be able to delegate AERO emissions to their pools. So, just wanted to show you guys that real quick because, there's obviously inverse finance, reserve protocol, different protocols that we talked about in previous videos, but we really wanted to highlight overnight because of their interesting yields that you can gain from their tokens. So, actually popping into overnight, we will see the dashboard for USD plus. And essentially what you're seeing here is currently there is a daily APY of 5.7%. But over the last 3 months, you can see that the average APY of just holding the token in your wallet, not actually providing it to any liquidity pools, not doing anything else with it, you're able to bring in, or over the last 3 months, around 20% on your USD plus. And so, that's 20% on top of those other pools that we saw at 18, 22, even 30%. And so I thought that was super interesting and something we want to show, that there's really more yield to be grabbed than what's advertised on Aerodrome. And the reason behind this is their backing strategy. And essentially, if you were to go down here to the USD plus portfolio, you can see the different strategies that they're using to back the USD plus token. And so, essentially, I'm going to pass it over to Zoe in a sec to talk a little bit more about this. But they're using a series of liquidity pool, delta neutral strategies to essentially bring in more yield for these tokens. So yeah, so you got any other thoughts on the strategy that Overnight is using for their tokens?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the rundown, Eb. That was a great dive in. What I will say is these yield bearing stable coins are here to stay, guys. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that these are going to be massive in the future. Right now, if you think about the stablecoin industry, right, you basically had it started off with Tether, and that's really like the king, right? And then you have obviously USDC, which is like another, second player, but still very prominent. What is the thing that's lacking with these stable coins? The thing that is lacking is that those companies that run that, whether it's Circle or Tether, the company, are just taking all the yield. Like, they pass you on a dollar pegged stable coin that's not doing anything, and they're keeping all the yield from the underlying strategy. And the underlying strategy is just investing in US treasuries, right? What you're seeing now is the development in DeFi of multiple yield bearing stable coins. And overnight finance is one of the protocols that's really doing well in this space. Why I want to say that it's here to stay is you actually, here, Ev, if I can share for a sec.
Yeah.
You actually have, most recently, this was probably a couple weeks ago, you actually have Paxos, which, everyone knows Paxos, one of the largest kind of crypto companies, highly regulated, and doing super well, but they're actually releasing their own yield bearing stablecoin, guys. Like, these things are going to be massive in the future. People want to hold one token and earn yield. They don't want to go out and have to hunt for it themselves. And so, if Paxos is getting into the game, then these are going to be massive. So going into the strategy
quick
itself,
question on that, actually. So,
Yeah.
So I guess just from that perspective, what is the benefit to a company like Paxos or some of these other organizations that are big into the crypto space? What's the benefit for them in building one of these kind of yield-bearing stablecoins? Right? Is it just bringing more users to their platform? Like, what's the angle from like the enterprise structure when they're looking at something like this?
Yeah. So, I mean, you really never see a company as profitable as Tether, like on 100 billion in deposits, like just basically earning 5% risk-free from treasuries is like unheard of. So you're basically seeing people tilt towards the side of like, okay, we're not going to take 5%, maybe we'll take 1%, or maybe we'll take 0.5%. So for Paxos, if they grow this to enough scale, that's still a substantial amount of revenue for them. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is Paxos obviously has a massive product suite. So if you attract users with kind of these stablecoin deposits and things of that nature, like that, I think will, like, they're playing that angle as well, where they're trying to like bring a bunch more users in. Now, of course, with these yield-bearing stablecoins, there's a variety of different angles you can take. So if Ev, you want to pull up that overnight screen again, we can look at the angle that these guys are taking. And it's actually a pretty interesting one. As Evan kind of went through, like today, it's 5.7%, but over the last 3 months, you can obviously see it's 20+%. What you're getting, not even in the liquidity pool, guys. Like, so the liquidity pool and the Aerodrome farming and all of that is separate from what you're getting from actually just holding these tokens themselves. And so right here, you can see they're basically using a delta neutral strategy with ETH on Aave and Moonwell. And that's basically how they're generating the yield. So as we mentioned before, it's not financial advice. There's obviously risks that are associated with all of these positions. And you guys will have to go kind of look into them on your own. But what's really interesting is, these guys have been delivering really solid returns for multiple months, a couple of years at this point. And it's really going to be interesting to see how this kind of yield-bearing stablecoin landscape evolves. Obviously, overnight's involved, reserve protocol is involved. Now you're seeing, other protocols get involved, like Paxos and things like that. So clearly, this is something that is here to stay. And as always, the early adopters end up doing really well. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, I think one more thing just to add on to that is to actually bring in the TVL numbers. We're looking at 37 million just for the USD Plus token, like we talked about on the Aerodrome side of things. USDC Plus is at 11 million. So these are obviously widely used tokens, relatively, right? When you're looking at some of these stables on base. Another thing that's kind of interesting is these are across multiple chains, and so when you look at Optimism or Arbitrum, depending on what you guys as users are deciding to yield farm on, you'll want to do due diligence on the different strategies they have across the different chains. So I just wanted to call that out really quick because it is an interesting strategy that they switch up the assets. Understandably, Moonwell's not on Arbitrum. It's not on ZK Sync. They wouldn't be able to use that for their strategies on those chains, but they do have different strategies across chains. But yeah, interested, Sia and Mata, to hear your guys' thoughts.
For a market that's going sideways, right, this is an interesting way to continue to gather yield, right, on some of the stuff that you're doing in the crypto space. I think from like a pessimistic side, right, there's always something with all this new technology and all these new things that they're almost like test networks, right? Like, what can we do until this thing breaks type of deal, right? So it's like, for me, I'm trying to think of like, what are some of the things that could go wrong within, the portfolios they build or things like that, which I think, Evan, to your last point, is important to just know how these pieces are structured before you actually enter into them. So again, crypto is the wild, wild west. It's just making sure that you're staying on top of everything and making sure you're not getting anything that you don't know kind of the full story about. So
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, so I think one more thing just to call out, if you guys want to do your own due diligence on these tokens, on these strategies, go ahead, navigate to this overnight finance page, hop into these tokens, and what you'll be able to do is actually look at the wallet on DBank. Right down here, you can get this link and it'll show you the different positions. It's one thing to read this and and take it at face value. It's another thing to dive in and actually verify these positions are what they say they are. So yeah, with that, I think we could throw it over to you, Mata, to do a little more TA on the AERO token.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not too much has changed, honestly, since last week. Let me just pull up my screen here. So honestly, the same trend lines, support lines, resistant lines, etc., that we've been looking at for a long time. We're really in that purple accumulation zone that we've been talking about for weeks now at this point. What is really nice is, I know we made a video last week and we were talking about how this lower range, we'd probably see at least a little bit of a bounce. As we can see, we went a little bit below that on a wick basis, but we actually didn't close below that. So nothing confirmed below it, which is nice. And we saw something like a 15 or so percent, it looks like, increase from the bottom of that range. So again, this is an area where if you're a long-term holder of AERO, it's probably a good time to continue to accumulate if you're thinking that this thing's going to go higher. I think the reasons to get concerned would be, of course, if Bitcoin starts to do very, very poorly, and if we actually break through this and confirm below this accumulation zone. That's an area where you need to start to rethink and really understand, is this something that I believe in the long term? Because once it breaks below that, it's something that you might need to be in for the next 3, 5, maybe even 10 years, right? So you're thinking of like very long term if you're continuing to be in this investment, if it breaks down from there. But it was really cool to see that bounce right off kind of our lower range, right? It's an area that we've all talked about accumulating in. So super exciting time for AERO. I think, again, it's all going to come down to Bitcoin and the rest of the market right now. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on how all that's going while we're keeping an eye on this as well.
Yeah, I think that was a great rundown. And as always, if you guys want to stay up to date on the newest Aerodrome news, this is the channel to do it. We're covering it every week, and we've always got some of the best alpha that you can find. As always, if you guys like this content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe below, and we'll catch you next week. Wagney.